Okay, so we had thunder and lightning last night, which woke up almost all of Sydney, scared my dog half to death. He's still shaking this morning. And off the back of the thunder and lightning, we have Traidy. How are you, Traidy?
Doing very well. How's your dog doing? And what kind of dog do you have?
I have a boxer. He's happy now. He's got his toys. He usually comes up to get some affection because he gets jealous when I'm doing these.
Yes.
He hasn't come up yet, but he got soaked. The window was open, so it's raining on his bed, and he didn't like the thunder, so he's shaking. And so he's had quite a traumatic night. So we'll have to look after him today.
Yeah, please, we welcome him. I think he's actually the special guest, not me.
That's done well. He holds a good conversation, so and he's far more likable than me, that's for sure. So anyway, lovely to get you on this show. I know this is for talking to a perfectionist here. This is our second attempt at doing this, and that eye roll is noted, by the way. The screens jump backwards and forwards. I want everyone to know that you rolled your eyes at that comment.
I'm so saucy. I'm so sorry. I can't hide it. Yeah. So most people who know me understand. They know there's going to be a lot of drama and effects. So all good.
Drama effect's good. And what's your thoughts on me having? I don't know if it's a dig or an observation of you being a perfectionist.
No, I think it's quite accurate, actually. I think most creatives are. And sometimes it can be a good thing and sometimes it can be a bad thing.
Okay. All right. So do you want to explain what makes you creative?
So I'm actually a songwriter by trade back in the day. When I used to be in the church, used to lead worship and write songs. But I also ran a whole bunch of other ministries as well, or programs within specific churches. So when I talk about perfection, that's what I mean. I tend to overthink or ruminate on if I've spoken at an event or if I've written a song or performed that for anybody else. When you open it up to the public, obviously you bare your heart and your soul because it's something that's come from within. And I think that's where some of the trouble can start. So perfectionist, yes. Creative, yes. I do think in the disability space and the space that I'm in now, I still think that I'm still a creative.
Okay, so if I'm reading it correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm often wrong. So your perfectionism attribute is more existential. So it's basically for the experience of those around you. Your involvement of their experience, you want to be perfect.
Yeah, well, I want them to feel safe, and I want them to actually enjoy the experience, and I want it to be joyful to them, not burdensome. And I think, so ultimately, most of the times I'm stressing about whether that person is going to engage with the service or the song or whatever it is in a healthy way, and they're actually going to enjoy their time and their experience there.
Okay. All right. And what about intrinsically? Are you still a perfectionist on that basis that you want everything to come to you perfect, or are you okay with imperfections?
Oh no, I love imperfection because that's where the mess, I love having the ability to sit with something and engage with it when it's raw. And then being able to turn that into or refine it into something that's beautiful or pleasing to somebody else. I think that's probably the joy there. I think a lot of creatives sit and do that. If you think of a painter, someone who sculpts, we're often getting the raw materials and then we're creating something that we know others are going to enjoy or others going to love to experience.
Okay.
That's part of the work. But that's also, like in some sense, it's not people pleasing, but it's being or having the ability to look at something that no one else would view as beautiful or worthy and creating that aspect or attribute to it, and then having somebody else behold that and have it endeared to their heart is something that I enjoy about the process of creativity.
I'm going to challenge you here, if you don't mind. Okay, I'm halfway through a coffee, so by the time I finish my coffee, I'm a nice person. Round here, not so much. I'm halfway, so you're going to get a mixed bag. All right?
Right.
I don't think you're a perfectionist. Okay. I that's why when I was thinking of when you're describing yourself, and I agree, you're a creative person, and all your background experience and what you do and what makes your eyes light up is down to creativity. But I don't have you down as a perfectionist, okay? Because if you're a perfectionist, it's how it comes into you. Everything must be perfect for you. All right, I want the perfect part, I want the perfect house, I want the perfect life, I want the perfect whatever. Okay. Whereas your eyes lit up more on creativity, something that's imperfect, something that's lopsided, something that's someone else's trash. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's about the journey of making something raw, rough, ready, neglected, dismantled, ignored, and making it beautiful and perfect for someone else.
A great perspective. I think a lot of us are probably caught. I know a lot of creatives. I speak to a lot of people, and often I think back in the day, the narrative was that you're then a perfectionist. And I think, yeah, we probably need to separate that. I mean, it's a great perspective and a great point of view as well. And I accept that. That's something I probably need to reprogram my mind in, instead of thinking that I'm a perfectionist.
There we are. Well, your perfectionism took us into the second episode, but the first episode no one ever saw.
Yeah.
So that's all good. Okay, so you, I do want to hear a bit more about songwriting, but before I do that, I want to know about what Traidy's doing now, because there's a lot of characters, a lot of context and layers to who you are. But the big one there was that you're working in disability. I want to know how you've applied that personality for people with disabilities.
Yeah, so my now husband and I, a few years ago, I ended up working in the disability and mental health space. I worked in foster care and adoption. I worked in various parts of the community services landscape. And my love and passion was always the disability sector. And then I saw that there was a noticeable gap within that community or within that space. No one was catering to the various identities of individuals who may have a disability. And when I say that, I mean those who are part of the LGBTQIA plus community as well. I'm part of the community myself, and I was actually at that stage busy figuring that out. So I was not dating, let's just say previously, I was not dating any men. I was actually in relationships with women at that time, and then I started figuring things out for myself. And so that self-discovery, which is that internal journey we were just talking about once again, led me to my partner and eventually a more inclusive understanding of Christianity and stuff like that. That whole journey kind of made me ask the question, who's catering to those who are part of the LGBTQ community and may also have a disability? Oops, I didn't know that does that. That's cool. Sorry.
I like that. That's fantastic.
They're agreeing with us. AI, thanks. So once I discovered that and asked that question, I felt that actually it was a calling to then open up in the space, in the disability space, an organization that had a specific division or arm that catered to that community itself. And so that's what we ended up doing. I mean, we do service all people with a disability, but at the same time, we now have a specific division that caters to our community, that's led by our community. And what we've done now as well is we've kind of opened it up, and now we're hiring and using individuals who also have a disability to walk alongside and work alongside. Sorry, that was very ableist of me, walk alongside. To work alongside those who may also have the lived experience of being part of the community. So it's just been amazing seeing that ignited in the hearts of so many other individuals. So I was so grateful that came to me, that question, that calling, I would call it, and then answering that and actually adhering to that and following through has led us to where we are now.
Okay, I love that, and I like the way you got your micro specialism, because by doing that precisely, it's perfect for them. Okay, so that joins the dots quite nicely there as well, and I think in my experience in the disability sector and its peripherals is not exclusively, but in a large part of it is when people have had lived experience. the service delivery, which it is better.
Yep.
Okay, it's a bit like if you've been a waiter and you go out for dinner, you're going to be a little bit more palatable and empathetic to their stresses because you've been there and done it.
Yep.
Okay, all right. I want to know a little bit about your journey before. So offline, when we weren't recording, you mentioned South Africa, which I've got a familiarity with myself as well. Yes. Tell me more.
Yeah, so I'm a very proud South African. You can hear by the rolling of my R's. I'm from a beautiful place called Port Elizabeth. It's now known as Kaberga. So we've just changed our names. And so it's known as the windy and the friendly city. I would say that, yeah, my community there are quite diverse and rich in culture and joy and being animated and loving to dance and loving food and life. So I grew up mostly in South Africa. I came to Australia in 2017 on a prayer and a desire to come here. I felt like it was a calling to actually come and work specifically in the legal space, because I'm actually a lawyer by trade. And I know my history is quite eclectic, especially when we talk about my work history. I know a lot of recruiters are like, this is so difficult. We don't know where to place you because you've done almost a little bit of everything. So when I came here in 2017, the desire was to become a solicitor and requalify here. And then that kind of led into the community services space as well. Just with the work that I was doing back then in South Africa, in ministry and in the church, in some form of outreach. And so that kind of just sparked my desire when I came here to Australia.
Okay. Just on a side note, my partner's from South Africa. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before. You like biltong?
Oh, I just ate biltong last night. So
I make it. So I'll make you some. My gift to you. We do experimental flavors, and believe it or not, the preferred experimental flavor by all South Africans I know is chocolate. It's like blasphemy.
Chocolate.
I know. Try it.
I mean, I can understand the salty and the sweet going together and that kind of, playing on your palate. But one for me, just want to let all the listeners know, biltong is better than beef jerky. Don't ever compare biltong to beef jerky in America, because, yeah, South Africans will disown you immediately.
Yes, that's true.
Whole experience. Let's just say that.
It's a bit like have your steak done. If you overcook it and turn it into leather, there's your jerky. If you have it rare, it's a good cut, and you do what you do, there's your biltong.
And with lots of spice and flavor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, when we first met, okay, you talked about biases. You did this lovely speech when we made us all close our eyes, and we talked about gender bias. There's roles and what have you, which naturally we all walked into the trap. And the point was made. It was very clear, as you know. Okay, so that's good. So there's an element of recalibration going on there, which is good. Now, our listeners, we don't necessarily need to go through that because obviously this isn't interactive, but he did share a story which was also an eye-opener in South Africa. If I remember correctly, it was something doing broom handles.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah.
You said nothing is off bounds.
Trigger warning, just to anybody. But we're going to talk about sex and HIV and AIDS training. So in South Africa, I did a lot of work out in community as well. And sometimes we went to impoverished areas where there was a lack of education around HIV and AIDS. And so at one stage, we had gone into a specific area and to use an example of how to place a condom on a specific private part, because we had noticed in a specific community that there was higher rates of HIV and AIDS contraction in that area. So we decided that we would do a whole bunch of talks on safe sex, on what you need to do with the practice itself and how to place on a condom. Instead of using a banana or something else like that, we decided that stage, the only thing we had at our disposal was a broomstick. And so upon doing that specific training each and every single time. When we had gone back to that community months later, we had realized that there was a greater increase then in children as well being born with HIV and AIDS, which is really, really sad. And when we looked at the data and went back and tried to find out why that was happening, we found out that a whole bunch of families were coming back to us and saying that they had done exactly what we had told them to do. And there were a whole bunch of brooms with condoms, laying in the corner of rooms. Very tragic story, very tragic case. But the first thing that I took away from that was we didn't get people who spoke the specific languages that were there to actually do that training. And secondly, even though we had good intentions, we did not follow through in the sense of actually showing and probably speaking to the adults in a language and a way that they would fully understand.
I think it's such a big learning curve, that one, for anybody, whether this is in your world or not. More likely, it's not going to be someone's remit, what you're talking about there, but the lessons are there. And I think the more out there the example is, the more we can train our brain to look at things differently. My big takeaway there is the assumption on communication. So we assume it has a sort of common sense feel to it without getting too graphic, but that assumption is where it all falls down, and yes, it's tragic is the outcomes. Okay, I was listening to you with a smile, but the story's horrific in many respects. But the lesson there is on assumption. I think in the disability space, that's massive itself, because just things that we'd assume we've explained a certain way, it's been interpreted a certain way. Very rarely is the case.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the times, because I talk to people about this, especially those who have church trauma, our use of language, we need to be so careful, because it's not about what we're saying, it's about what people are perceiving in their minds when they hear certain words and certain things. So I learned this with some of my own team members in Chosen Family. Sometimes I would say something and I now ask them, what did you hear when I said this? Or when I asked you to do this or complete this task? Just to test and to see if what I'm trying to communicate or convey is actually translating over in their minds, because they come with their own collective experience from a different country or from different tribe or different state. And so sometimes we might think or assume, once again, that this means that, right? Everybody knows that, but it might be completely different for them.
And even in the most direct things, so you and I could have a conversation, we're both speaking good enough English, okay? But as you quite rightly said, if you ask someone, what did you hear when I said this, okay, it could be completely different. I get it with my staff, and it's like they come back with the polar opposite of what I said. I was like, did I say don't do that? But I've heard something different, and we need to make sure that things are perceived accurately if you want the outcomes that we're after.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, if you had to translate that over into the disability space, from my experience, what I've seen is often a lot of individuals that we support don't know who they are outside of their own trauma, right? And so sometimes we may say certain things or ask them certain questions, and that's a trigger, or it provokes a certain emotion or a certain memory in their minds. I've literally sat across participants and I've said certain things, certain words, and to me, it's a norm. This is what we talk about in the space. There's a certain jargon, there's a certain language in the NDIS space. I'm thinking that person understands exactly what I'm saying, with no idea that I'm actually triggering this person, or, they're going into a memory. And I've actually seen this. I've had one client specifically, I remember I could see that they were not present, they were not grounded, they were not there, they were disassociating in that moment. And so I had to gently kind of pull them back and go, hey, listen, when I just spoke to you, it felt like you went somewhere in your mind. are you okay? And just checking in with them, and found out that they had gone to this other place. What I had said had triggered some sort of a memory, and it was not a good memory. It was not a good experience for them. So I noticed that they were quite quiet, and they were speaking under their breath, and their head went down. Um, and I don't think that we pay enough attention sometimes within the NDIS space to little cues like that as well.
Those human interactions are vital, and people forget that a conversation, the Latin is with, is two-way, three-way, four-way traffic. And people are more concerned about what they're going to say. So a lot of time they're thinking of their answer before you finish speaking. The focus is more on the output than actually looking at the cues. And a lot of them, as you quite rightly said, could be tonality, could be their body language, how they're looking, the colour of their face, if the blood's drained out quickly, and that. If you look for those, you've got to change things quickly.
Yep. And I think with that experience as well, it also taught me, I was speaking about stuff like choice and control and capacity and all of that. And I remember the individual that I was sitting with came from a specific area where they actually enjoy and appreciate extreme sincerity and for you to be extremely direct. So I was fluffing around, and they ended up telling me, why the fuck are you fluffing around? No idea what you're talking about. You're one of those people. And so I had to explore, what does that mean? You're one of those people. What does those people look like? And they were saying, often people will speak to me with all this high and lofty English and say all this jargon from the NDIS. I don't understand it. I just need you to tell me straight up what you're going to help me with and how you're going to do it and when. So that was also an experience and a learning moment for me to sit back and go, okay, I've become too NDIS-y. I actually need to go back to just being plain and simple and earnest in my communication with certain individuals.
So for those people that are outside of Australia, the NDIS is a National Disability Insurance Scheme. We've spoken about this a few times with some other people. So that's what that is. And you're quite right, within the sector itself, when you're speaking business to business, there is terminology which is appropriate because of sensitivities of the sector. And if you use more business agnostic terms, then it doesn't sit well. So that's why we change our word palette for that situation. But you're quite right, that's not factoring in what we call participants, which is the end user, the people that need support. And I think it's more common than not with those people. They just need things layman's. They just say what it does on the tin. Just I think you're right.
Yeah, I think a lot of our clients or participants, whatever you want to call them, because we're probably going to come up with another term just because we can, right? Soon. I think with a lot of our participants, the biggest thing is to continuously be curious and to never assume, and to always engage with sincerity when you're approaching the services that you're going to be providing to them, and allow them to label themselves, allow them to frame themselves and their own experience and their interactions with the system, which is the NDIS. So I'm doing that more and more now. I'm finding myself asking more questions before I sit with a participant or a client, and it actually helps me, because at the end of the day, it actually answers a lot of my other questions that I would be asking at a later stage anyway, naturally and organically.
Well, that for me, by definition, is empowerment, which is really what a lot of this is about as well. So let's rewind a little bit. You started off by saying that you're a songwriter. Okay, I'm making an assumption now that you might have sung some of these songs and that as well. And you integrated quite a bit in the church as well. Are there songs that we will know, or do I need to go to church to hear you?
No. So, a lot of this stuff, I mean, I shouldn't have probably mentioned this today. I can't believe that we're talking about this. I thought that we were going to talk more about the NDIS and chosen family. But a lot of the songs I did write at that stage in South Africa, I felt was very personal and was for me and my specific journey with God, And I shared some of my songs with people in South Africa, and I know people are still requesting that I actually go sit down and record them and actually release them to the world. But I'm still quite precious about it. I still feel that for the time being, it should remain in my echo chamber with myself and, my experience with God. And eventually there will come a day and a time that I do release those songs. But no, 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 no. Some of my friends still have recordings of me singing and leading those songs. So I know a lot of them still sing it also in their private time, and they respect my wish to keep it still just private for now. I think, yeah, once you release a song and you put it out there, it's out there. I'm not ready yet for that.
There's that perfectionist bit coming through again, hey? This is, and I've been debating this whilst I've been listening to you, whether I asked this question or not. If you don't want to answer, just put me back in my place and I'll ask a different question.
Okay.
But
No,
you did mention,
fine, but I'm open.
but you can ask the answer. What's the worst that can be said is no. You mentioned in one of the things you said earlier that you help people with is dealing with people with church trauma. Okay, and the problem is it's now sitting with me. I'm now overthinking it, and is it worse than it is? Is it standard? Is it people are fed up giving? I don't know. I don't know.
Yes. A lot of the individuals that I do support are people like me who have started their journey in some form of Christianity, whether they're Baptist, Charismatic, Catholic, whatever it is, and they've just begun to realize that there's a political side of the church, that there's the monetary side or the business side of the church as well, or a commercial side to it. And a lot of people have also begun to realize that the Bible itself, the way that it has been interpreted, the way that it has been presented to many of us is quite exclusionary. But when you follow the teachings of Christ, that's radically inclusive, actually, because he empowered women. Nowhere did Christ actually talk about homosexuality. So already there's all of that drama and energy or political stances so I think a lot of people are beginning to deconstruct. When we say deconstruct, a lot of people are beginning to have an awareness when they start studying the scriptures and the Bible, this library of books put together. They're realizing that it's not as binary, it's not as black and white as people have made it seem, or religion has made it seem, organized religion. And I often feel, I know when I started my journey, I often feel like the church itself has focused or hyper-focused so much on what you should not do wrong, instead of the love, joy, and the unity that we're meant to be experiencing, and the love for humanity that, the God of the scriptures, I believe, is focusing on. So when I look at the teachings of Christ, and often I look at the church, I'm like, wow, there's a massive disparity and difference there. And so a lot of people have a lot of trauma when they come from church, especially if they've been in leadership, especially if they've been on the upper side of it, and maybe they've taken a stance to be more inclusive. And then you find the church will often turn on them and exclude them from activities. I have a lot of friends who have opened up their churches to the LGBTQIA community, for example, and then they've been ostracized or cut out from those denominations. I have a lot of friends who've experienced divorce. I have a lot of friends who came to me and disclosed in the church that they were being physically abused, and instead the leadership team were telling them to remain faithful to the marriage, and that God hates divorce, which is absolutely against scripture as well. So those types of disparities, a lot of us are becoming, I don't want to use this word, but I will, just to piss off some people, woke. People are becoming woke. People are doing their own study and realizing, oh, that was never in there. That my pastor or my leader, just had their own framework and understanding and decided to spew that hate or that violence or that discrimination over the pulpit instead of actually teaching me plain and simple, what the scriptures say and allowing me to lead my life in a way that kind of matches with those values. So I've seen a lot of that. I've got a lot of individuals I currently support who've come from churches where they had to seek approval for everything, which is really strange. So they could never really live their lives and make up their own minds. And I think as churches or church leaders, we're facilitators. We give people all the information and they make their own decisions, kind of like the NDIS, kind of like any other space, that we shouldn't be inserting our own agendas in their own political agendas within the church. That type of stuff should never actually happen.
I love that. I love that. And I'm glad I asked the question. It feels like there should be a second episode to dig into that, because you went into somewhat of a flow state then as well. But that is interesting. I assume that you're still practicing now. You do your church and whatever. Yeah, it's just a matter of.
Well, it's more of a private practice, right? Yeah. People still think that I'm part of a church. I haven't been part of a proper church here in a while. The moment I came out, the moment my husband and I got together, when we were dating and eventually got married, there was massive backlash from the church, massive backlash from a lot of people that I thought were friends. A lot of people have said, there's nothing you could do. I love you with God and Christ's love, Traidy. Nothing that you can do that will separate or inhibit that. The moment I got married to my husband, believe me, it all flipped. And that also just shows some of their own bias and some of their own struggles and wrestling with their own understanding of faith and living a godly life. I don't think that you can attribute that to God specifically.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right there. So my partner says she's from South Africa, and she's a member of a very famous church here. I'm not. She is, but she's been through a divorce, and the animosity and the hypocrisy and all this. It's horrible to witness, because you're saying one thing and doing another. But it's standard. It's just a standard life, external from a church or any religion. If you surround yourself with people that behave in that manner, then you don't know where you stand. I'm not trying to knock the church in any way. I love the church. I think the church has a great role to play, right? I think if we had to get back to the basics, yes,
love your neighbor, which is look after the widow, which is stand up for those who are being oppressed and those who are being discriminated against. I think if we had to go back to the practicalities, the church would probably become one of the most inclusive, safest, and greatest places to be in. I've had great experiences with certain people within the church, and then I've had some not so great experiences with the system. I think the system, we have to separate it at times. The system itself has not kept up, has not adapted itself. It's not been agile and flexible. And a lot of those who are in leadership are hoarding power. Now, before I get in trouble for all my political jargon, I'll rest my case over there. And I think a lot of people who, like your partner, would have experienced that, know exactly what I'm talking about. And those are the individuals that I often sit with and try to help them separate the system and what they experience there to the actual church itself, and to be part of Christ's bride, in essence.
Perhaps you should set up your own church and call it Chosen Family.
Wow. So you've caught me a little off guard there. So yeah, my husband and a couple of people have already kind of alluded to this, and this is becoming a reoccurring theme. Maybe it will take place once I'm ready and settled with Chosen Family. There is a desire at some stage to do something that's online, because I have a lot of individuals that obviously I support in South Africa and abroad as well.
Okay, brilliant. Well, hopefully when we share this out, this will get some other conversations happening and get some momentum. We never know. We never know what good will come in. So, okay. All right. So you mentioned Chosen Family. We need to wrap up. We've got a little bit over time, which is I'm going to blame you for. It's entirely your fault, Traidy.
Entirely.
Chosen Family, we talked a little bit about what you do. If someone wanted to contact you, firstly, how would they contact you, and why should they contact you in relation to Chosen Family?
Well, I mean, the fact that I'm handsome helps. As to the why, no. So they can contact us on any platform, any mode of communication. So text message, call, website, email. I think we just don't have fax at this stage. I know some hospitals and doctors still use the fax machine. Like, wow, that's insane. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. So there's many avenues and ways to contact us. I might be in a specific state speaking at an event, so run up to me as well. It would be amazing. Once again, ableist, come to me at any stage. My goodness, the work. And then at the same time, why Chosen Family? Well, we provide core supports. For those who don't know, that's kind of like your day-to-day tasks or living requirements, whether it's taking out into the community or doctor's appointment or just having a yarn with you or cleaning your house. That's something we can do. We do have respite services as well. As I mentioned earlier, the LGBTQIA division is there to help you with those specific needs. And then there is education and training that will be rolled out soon. I am spending the next 6 months recording heaps of training that I actually want to make extremely affordable to all. So whether you're an NDIS provider or not, if you're just a healthy skeptic, that's great as well. And so hopefully we'll release an LMS itself, so you'll be able to purchase the training and then do the self-paced training yourself, which is, at some stage, we'll also have a specific unit delving into church trauma. So I'm hoping to also in some way weave that in there, and then we'll do some practical things around a community, especially the LGBTQIA community. Many of us have served within the church. Many of us are probably still there, but we're not allowed to be in leadership, or we're not allowed to actually express that we are who we are. So yeah, I'll share all of that at some stage as well. We do support coordination as well. We'll at some stage also have a division that's actually part of the LGBTQIA community doing support coordination as well and catering specifically to that community, which I'm excited for. Yeah. So there's a lot of things currently at play, and we're working at that.
Good. And I think what's nice is a lot of it intertwines with your previous experiences, things that you can't ignore, things that you let manifest and marinate, if you like.
Make me feel like a chef, like I'm cooking up something, but yeah.
That's it. Some nice build talk, some nice build talk. All right, listen, it's been lovely chatting with you as ever. I look forward to our next conversation, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me here today. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode. I hope that you did enjoy it, had lots of takeaways from it. As before, please subscribe below so you can keep on top of any new releases we have. And also, if you would like to have your story told, just reach out with me and I'd love to give you that platform. My best email address is tom@purplepatchconsulting.com. Thank you.